My guest is Josh Malone. Josh, welcome.
Thanks, John. Good to be here.
So, Josh, first of all, tell me about the balloon invention and how this came to be, the invention that's centered around water balloons.
It was a big problem, right? I played with a lot of water balloons when I was a kid, and then I had this period where I was too old for it. But then I had my own kids, and so long, hot summers in Texas. If you're going to be outdoors, you got to have water sports, and so we were very dedicated to water balloons. A lot of it was my own interest, but I got my kids involved, and we would gather up, the 500 pack of balloons or 2 or 3 of them, and everyone's together. We're filling and tying, and a few hours later, the kids are like, "Dad, can we start the water balloon war yet?" And I'm like, "No, we got to get our full tub, then we can start." But obviously, it's one of those things that if we've ever tried it, it's very tedious. It takes hours to fill these water balloons, and then they're gone in like 2 minutes. And like a lot of things in my daily life, when I see there's something's too hard or too complicated or inefficient, I'm looking for a solution. I'm thinking in my head, there's got to be a better way to do this. And so there was clearly a need, and I started thinking, and I tried a lot of different things along the way, different techniques and tools and gadgets, and there just wasn't a good solution. And I just set myself out to solve it.
It's called Bunch of Balloons. That was the ultimate name of it, right?
We called it Bunch of Balloons.
Okay, well, just a little bit on your background, because you weren't just the average guy who playing with water balloons. You've had a history of inventing things with TI, I believe, here in Dallas.
Yeah, Texas Instruments was my first job out of college, and it was a fantastic experience. I mean, I worked in high tech, cutting edge technology, and I was able to solve lots of problems and apply my my training to some extent, but then a lot of creativity to solving the problems at TI, and that was a great experience. I was there for about 10 years.
Well, tell folks how Bunch of Balloons works, the concept behind it and the technology behind it.
Sure. So with Bunch of Balloons, there's a connector that goes on the end of a garden hose, and extending from that connector, there's 35 tubes, small tubes. And at the end of each tube is a small water balloon with a small rubber band around the neck of the balloon, holding it to the tube. And so you have 35 balloons, 35 elastic rings around the necks of the balloon. You connect that to the water hose, and the water goes through the tubes, and simultaneously these balloons fill up. And then when they're full, you give it a shake and they fall off their tubes. And then that little elastic ring goes along for the ride, and it clenches the neck of the balloon closed. So it's sealed, there's no tying. It's all done almost instantaneously. You can do 100 water balloons in 1 minute with my solution.
This is crazy. I mean, you're the mad scientist of water balloon wars. So I wish you'd been around when I was a kid. But so 100 balloons filled with water, and they fall off. They're sealed when they fall off. And I suppose that wasn't easy to come up with for them to be sealed as soon as they fell off.
Right. That was one of the main challenges I was working on was the tying problem, and finding a way to seal these balloons without having to fumble around with tying a knot. And so getting that elastic ring, just the concept that it could actually seal the balloon and hold the water in, and then getting one with the right elasticity and the right geometry. There was some engineering involved and some creativity, and that was one of the harder problems. In fact, I was actually experimenting with that, where I had a small O-ring, and I got it around the neck of a single balloon, and then I had to figure out how to get water in it, and I inserted the tube through the balloon and expanded open the ring, and then I had to get water into the other end of the tube. And that's the point where I went to put a hole in the cap that goes on the end of a garden hose.
Yeah.
And that's when one of the eureka moments was I realized there's room for a lot more tubes. And so the multiplicity was the other key discovery.
Bunch of balloons. You went to the patent office. You patented this, and you'd been through the process before, I guess, with with TI on some technical ones. So you had a handle on how to file a patent, correct?
Well, I thought so. I was pretty sophisticated. I had filed patents at TI, and I, like most Americans, understood that if you go through the process and come up with something new and you get a patent on it, that it will protect you and give you basically exclusive rights to that invention. So yeah, I definitely pursued patent protection.
Yeah, I mean, that's what the patent office does, right? I mean, was it Einstein that worked in the patent office originally? And once you get a patent, you're covered, right?
That's the concept. Our founders came up with that, in fact, and it was very unique in the world, where in Europe and in other jurisdictions, a patent was more of a privilege from the government. So you had to have lots of money, or you could purchase a patent. If you were friends with the king, you could get a patent. But our founders said, no, we want to democratize invention. So anyone that comes up with a new and useful invention can actually own the rights to it through the patenting process.
Okay, and this is where the peripetia happened. You had a big twist, a surprise. I understand, when somebody else knocked off your product.
Yeah, the scale of it was the surprise. So, you're not surprised that, you might see some Chinese knockoffs on eBay or Amazon if you've got a moderately successful product. But the shock was how fast and how big it happened. So we launched on Kickstarter, and it was a very successful launch. But only about 3 or 4 months later, one of these as seen on TV companies came out with national advertising, and their next step was to put it in all the major retailers as an impulse buy, or an end cap, or the checkout aisle. And this was big time. They took it, they copied it, they changed the color, gave it a new name, and absolutely flooded the market with copies of my invention.
Wow, wow. So they didn't ask your permission. They just knocked it off.
No, in fact, they blatantly disregarded my notice that I had patent on this, or patent pending at the time. And I was surprised. These large corporations, and it happens in all sorts of industries now. They don't care if you have a patent, because what are you going to do with your patent? That's their calculus. How are you going to stop us just because you have a patent?
So they sell on TV. They're putting the product in retail stores, and I assume you had some recourse because you did file a patent.
Yeah. So I had a patent. Actually, so what happened is they went to market, and so we're trying to compete. They're selling in Walmart. We're selling in Target, and then my patent issues. And so at this point, they still don't respect it, and I have to go to court and file a lawsuit. And we were fortunate to be able to get into the courthouse. Very few small businesses can afford it. It actually costs millions of dollars to pursue these patent enforcement in the courts. So that's what we did, and we were going to fight it out in court, because they weren't going to stop.
Wow. So you find yourself in a court battle, a very expensive one. And what happened there?
Well, we actually went to the judge. This is a federal judge in Texas, where I'm from, where I grew up, where I built my business, pay my taxes. I built my first product in my garage in Plano, Texas. And so we're able to go to the courthouse locally, which was very fortunate. And we asked the judge to grant us a preliminary injunction. And so that's a very high legal standard to meet. You have to prove irreparable harm and balance of hardships and likelihood of success. There's all these complicated legal standards that you have to meet. And after about 7 months and about $1.5 million of attorney and expert expenses, well, let me tell you, they had to put up a defense as a result of this. And so usually with a patent, your defense would be, we don't violate the patent because we use a different technology. Ours is different. And that wasn't going to work for them, because they copied exactly my invention.
No
So
kidding. Exactly the way you did it.
We found out later in court through the discovery process that they actually surreptitiously purchased one of my first edition products from Kickstarter. They sent it to their lab, they took it apart, they changed the green balloons to blue, and they painted it blue. And then they sent it over to their Chinese factory and just imported millions of units of exactly my invention.
That had to be a shocker.
Centuries.
Yeah. So they didn't change anything. They just duplicated it and started mass producing it.
Yep. And so
I assume the patent office totally protected you at this point. They stepped in, right? Do they do that sort of thing?
No, there's no patent police. The recourse in a patent case is a civil lawsuit. So there's, unlike copyright and other intellectual property rights, the FBI, Interpol, you have these enforcement agencies that will come to your aid, but that's not true with patents.
Okay. I just assumed they had some sort of a enforcement arm, but they don't. So that's interesting. So you go through the legal process of suing this company and trying to stop them. So what was the final ruling?
Yeah, well, they bet on their argument that my patent was invalid. So that's the second option when you're accused of infringement. And they alleged that, they actually hired an expert, I use the term loosely, from MIT, and he signed a statement that says, no one knows when a balloon is substantially filled with water. And so Josh's patent is invalid because it claims that when the balloon is substantially filled with water, they fall off and seal. And that was their best argument. They had dozens of other arguments. That was their best.
That's almost laughable from my perspective.
As a matter of fact, the only time I've ever heard a federal judge laugh in court, and I've listened to hundreds of cases now, is when they presented their argument to the appeals court and the judge on the bench actually laughed. And so basically they lost. And we were able to enjoin them. And I remember the moment that we got the ruling, and I called my wife and I was just euphoric because it was very desperate. These guys have never lost before. Dozens of inventors have been absolutely ruined by this behavior. And I remember I called my wife, I said, we won, we got the injunction. And at that point, I thought, the system kind of works. 3 weeks later, they launched a new product with a slight change and a new name, and the whole thing started all over again.
You got to be kidding me.
These guys don't stop. They don't
Wow.
stop.
Even after you won in court, they came back and did it again.
They did it again, and we went through the whole thing again. We were spending millions of dollars. We had to go and hire an expert economist to back up our case, and his bill for his services was $750,000.
Wow. Were you suing a Chinese company or is this a U.S. company?
This was a U.S. company.
Okay. Wow.
And we hear a lot about Chinese intellectual property theft. And I'll tell you a little known fact in all of the controversy over China's behavior is there's always someone on this side of the border, a U.S. company that's enabling it. There's an importer, there's a distributor, there's a bad actor on this side, and we've been giving them a free pass is what I've learned.
Yeah. Well, obviously, from all the stories you hear. So you're the inventor of a bunch of balloons. It's obviously very successful. You're selling, and then this giant company is selling everywhere. Did they have to pay you any money?
Eventually, but we took a big detour. You mentioned the patent office, and what do they do? Well, they don't help the inventor. There's a new program under the America Invents Act of 2011, and they've set up a court inside the patent office, and their job is to invalidate patents. And this is a brand new tribunal. It's an executive branch tribunal. If you remember your separation of powers, this is not in the judicial branch. And there's now 260 administrative patent judges, and they review patents. If you don't like a patent, you go and you pay them a fee and you say, your friends in the patent office made a mistake, please invalidate this patent. And that's what Telebrands did, the company that copied my invention, that lost in court in front of a real judge. They eventually lost in front of a real jury. They went back to the patent office, who was supposed to be protecting me, and they paid them to invalidate my patent. And so they took the same evidence and the same expert that said no one knows when a balloon is substantially filled with water, and these bureaucrats at the patent office agreed with them and revoked my patent and gave them a free pass for stealing my invention.
Wow. So even though you'd been granted a patent, now under this new system, you can go to one of their judges, pay them, and put on a case, I guess, to invalidate the patent. Do you have a chance to defend yourself in front of that judge with the patent office?
It's very limited. So it's designed to be faster and cheaper. And so if you think about it, it's kind of like a star chamber where you don't have due process, you don't have the right to testify, you don't get discovery. So like we had this evidence that they copied from the emails we got in a real court. Well, this administrative court doesn't allow those sorts of procedures. So it's very administerial, and it's based on the papers. You know, they decided on the papers, and they short circuit our traditional justice system. You get a 30-minute hearing. You know, in my case in the real court, we had a 6-day trial. In the patent office court, it's 30 minutes.
You got to be kidding me! 30 minutes?
Yep, that's it.
Wow. What's your recourse? So you won in a real court, and then this patent judge under this. How long has this new system been set up?
Since 2011.
So in this new system, you go to this patent judge in 30 minutes. He invalidates your patent.
Yeah, he listens to the attorneys for the infringer and their expert, who says no one knows when a balloon is substantially filled with water. And then they banter back and forth. And I remember one of the so-called judges asked a question of, I think it was my attorney, well, how do you know that when the first drop of water goes into the balloon that it doesn't start expanding at that point? And it's just, if you could kind of imagine, you know, how many angels can dance on the head of a pin? It's like they have these very, there's no common sense. There's no sense of justice. It's all, how can we twist and manipulate your words to get an outcome that, I don't know, just they like their power. They're interfering with the judicial process, and they decided against me. And so now we had conflicting rulings where in the real court, I had won resoundingly, and in the patent office, they had taken it away. And at that point, your question was, how did it turn out, I guess?
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, this is just boggling my mind because you invent this incredible product. Kids all over the world are happy and having fun with it. You have this company infringe on your patent and produce it, and they're the giant that comes on top of you to sell this, and then and then you test it in court, you win in court, and then some judge at the patent office in 30 minutes invalidates your patent over something stupid stuff like angels on the head of the pin thing. What's your recourse from there? What next step did you take once you had your patent invalidated?
The whole thing just spun out of control. And you know, I'll tell you, I've spent the last 6 years in court and in the legal system. I'm an inventor. This is nonsense.
Yeah.
And so I went to Washington, D.C. I went to the patent office. We had a protest. I joined some other inventors. We burned our patents on the steps of the patent office. The president noticed. We got a new director at the patent office. So at the time when I was going through this, the patent office was run by the head of patents for Google. So imagine these Silicon Valley tech companies, they don't want competition from a startup. So they said,
"Oh, kidding me, really?
We can go to Congress. We can pass a law, we can go to the patent office and we can implement the law and we can get rid of all these pesky inventors. And so what happened was my case started to get some attention, and there was change in management at the patent office. And I won an appeal at the Court of Appeals. And they changed one of the judges on my case, who was causing all this negative publicity for the patent office. They replaced him with another judge. And meanwhile, I was able to get another patent issued. And this is the game they play. This goes on for 10 years or more in these cases. You get a patent, you invalidate it, you appeal. Eventually you go to the Supreme Court, and it's back and forth, back and forth. It's who can survive the longest. Well, because we had such a hot selling product, we were able to pay these attorneys. It was about $75,000 every week. I mean, that's just about my annual salary when I left TI. And now I've got to come up with those funds every week. Well, we were selling, it was the global #1 selling outdoor toy. And so we just keep paying the attorneys to fight these guys. And then I serendipitously start this PR campaign to expose what's going on. And things start to turn around and go my way. And so that's the key, is who can survive the longest, who can attain the most influence in the legal system. That's who wins these battles.
This is, this is sickening. The little guy gets clobbered again. You got to have and the lawyers win.
Oh, yeah. The lawyers, the big corporations, the government. My case is a miracle. I mean, we overcame so many obstacles, and after 4.5 years, this company that stole my invention was only $1 billion company. They were only $1 billion company, right? So believe it or not, the cost of the litigation was impacting their bottom line such that they gave up. After 4.5 years, they said, we can't afford to fight Josh and his licensee anymore. And so they came to the table and settled and agreed to pay us most of what they owed us.
Josh, this should be a movie. This should absolutely be a movie.
Well, there's part one is there's a documentary called Invalidated on Amazon, and that tells the first part of the story. The second part is still up in the air. I've relocated to Washington to communicate to lawmakers and to the patent office, and right now, no one can survive this. No small business can build a business based on their patented disruptive technology and succeed. And we've got to turn this around. And then I'd love to see the movie, but I'd love to see, the conclusion in real life.
Yeah. We need a happy ending on this thing. So I guess number one would be do away with those patent judges. I don't know what are your suggestions or recommendations?
Yeah, well, that would be fantastic. We don't need a patent court. We have courts and we have juries. This is America. That doesn't seem politically viable, but there is legislation that would protect inventors and small businesses. And the key is to get policymakers to remember what the purpose of the patent system is. And so they viewed it more as, a tool for large corporations. When I was at Texas Instruments, we got thousands of patents every year. And, spending $10 million in litigation is just a cost. It's just a cost of doing business. So if we can get them to start looking at, giving small entities, small businesses and inventors a fair chance, then I think we can turn this around. So that's what we're focused on. Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. We can't afford to do that at this time.
Yeah, exactly. Well, kudos to what you're doing to change the system. And you have a nonprofit organization you're involved with, understand, to help push some of this forward?
Yes. When the legal system wasn't working for me, I needed help. US Inventor helped me. So it's a fledgling group of inventors. It's led by inventors, run by inventors, founded by inventors. And when I needed to go to Washington, the folks there came alongside me and they showed me, for instance, the Judiciary Committee is where the patent laws are written. So you need to talk to these congressmen and these senators. And so it's been a great support for inventors. And now I'm a full-time volunteer trying to grow the movement, and it's usinventor.org.
Okay, usinventor.org. Hey, thanks for taking time to share your story with us. It's an exciting, fun story with some real twists. So, absolutely, I want to see the documentary that's on Amazon. What's the name of it again?
It's called Invalidated: The Shredding of the U.S. Patent System.
Okay, so you can see that on Amazon. Well, listen, thank you very much for spending time sharing your story, and good luck with your fight on changing the system there with the U.S. Patent Office. Just in case one of us comes up with an idea as brilliant as bunch of balloons.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Josh.
Thank you very much. Well, thank you for taking an interest. It's neat when someone can engage. It was a good conversation. Thank you.